Cyrus the Great rides into Babylon in 539 BC without a fight. The gates are open. The people line the streets cheering. Persian propaganda will claim he liberated them from a tyrant. The reality is messier. He'd spent months bribing Babylonian priests and generals, promising them wealth and power if they betrayed their king. When Cyrus enters the city, he goes straight to the temple of Marduk, Babylon's chief god, and performs the sacred rituals as if he's always been their rightful king. He's conquered the greatest city in the world through corruption and theater. But here's the part that matters. After taking Babylon, Cyrus issues a decree. He declares that all peoples deported by previous empires can return to their homelands. The Jews, exiled to Babylon by Nebuchadnezzar decades earlier, are free to go home. They can rebuild their temple in Jerusalem. The Persian treasury will even fund it. This decree, recorded on a clay cylinder found in the ruins of Babylon, is sometimes called the First Declaration of Human Rights. Museums display it as proof of Persian tolerance and wisdom. This isn't tolerance, it's brilliant statecraft. Cyrus has just conquered an empire stretching from the Mediterranean to Central Asia. He can't garrison every city and suppress every rebellion, so he doesn't try. Instead, he lets people keep their gods, their customs, their local governments. They can do whatever they want, as long as they pay taxes and don't rebel. The Jews go home singing his praises. They literally call him God's anointed in their scriptures. Cyrus has turned conquered people into grateful subjects without spending a copper coin on occupation forces. This is the Persian Empire, not the mindless hordes from 300, not the decadent Orientals from Western imagination, the most sophisticated imperial system the ancient world had ever seen, built on pragmatism, tolerance as policy, and the understanding that you can rule people more effectively through their cooperation than their submission. Before diving into this forgotten superpower that shaped our world more than Greece or Rome, if you enjoy learning about the hidden truths of history, consider hitting that like button and subscribing for more content like this. And please comment below to let me know where you're listening from. This is the entire history of the Persian Empire, all 1200 years of it across 3 dynasties. And it's time we stopped pretending the Persians were the bad guys. We need to start by correcting the biggest misconception about Persian history, and it's a big one. When most people hear Persian Empire, they think of one continuous state, from Cyrus to Alexander. That's wrong. There were actually 3 Persian empires, separated by centuries and different ruling dynasties. The Achaemenid Empire, from 550 to 330 BC, founded by Cyrus and destroyed by Alexander. The Parthian Empire, from 247 BC to 224 AD, which fought Rome to a standstill for 4 centuries. And the Sassanid Empire, from 224 to 651 AD, which nearly destroyed the Byzantine Empire before being annihilated by the Arab conquests. These weren't the same state. They had different political systems, different religions, different military organizations, but they were all Persian in culture, language, and identity. They all ruled from the Iranian plateau. They all claimed to restore the glory of Cyrus. They're collectively the Persian Empire, in the same way we talk about China, even though the Han, Tang, Ming, and Qing dynasties were different states. The Western obsession with Greece has made us see Persian history through Greek eyes, and Greek sources are propaganda written by the winners. Herodotus, our main source for early Persian history, was Greek. He visited Persia and interviewed people, but he was writing for a Greek audience that had just fought 2 wars against Persia. His Persians are exotic, despotic, and ultimately inferior to Greek freedom and virtue. Xenophon, who wrote about Persian politics and warfare, was a Greek mercenary who fought against Persia. The sources we have are like learning about America from Soviet propaganda. Modern archaeology and Persian sources tell a different story. The Persians saw themselves as bringers of order to a chaotic world. Their kings called themselves King of Kings, ruling over other rulers. Their empire was multicultural by design, not accident. Wujing B, they built roads connecting their territories. They standardized weights and measures. They created a postal system so efficient that Herodotus himself praised it. They allowed conquered people to keep their religions and customs. This wasn't weakness. It was a system that worked for 2 centuries, while Greek city-states spent their time killing each other. So who were the Persians before they built an empire? They were a collection of tribes living in what's now southern Iran, scratching out a living in a harsh landscape of mountains and deserts. They were related to the Medes, who controlled a kingdom to the north. They were Indo-European peoples who had migrated into the region centuries earlier. They worshipped gods associated with fire and truth. They were warrior pastoralists, good with horses and bows. They were nobody special until a man named Cyrus decided to make them rulers of the world. Cyrus was born around 600 BC as the son of a Persian king who was vassal to the Median king. The Persians paid tribute. This arrangement worked until Cyrus decided it didn't. In 550 BC, he rebelled against his Median overlord, his own grandfather, according to some sources. He rallied the Persian tribes, defeated the Median army, and took their capital. The Median Empire became the Persian Empire in a single campaign. Cyrus had just pulled off one of history's great coups, overthrowing a regional power and inheriting their territory. But Cyrus had bigger ambitions. To the west was Lydia, a wealthy kingdom in Anatolia ruled by King Croesus. Croesus was so rich his name became synonymous with wealth. He controlled trade routes and gold mines. He consulted the oracle at Delphi about attacking Persia. The oracle told him that if he attacked Persia, a great empire would fall. Croesus took this as encouragement. He invaded. The great empire that fell was his own. Cyrus marched into Anatolia in 547 BC and destroyed the Lydian army. He besieged the Lydian capital Sardis and captured it. He took Croesus prisoner. Greek legend says Cyrus ordered Croesus burned alive, then relented and saved him, and Croesus became his advisor. This is probably bullshit, the kind of story Greeks told to make barbarians seem noble. What actually happened to Croesus is unknown. What matters is that Cyrus now controlled Anatolia and its wealth. Next, Cyrus turned east. Central Asia was controlled by various nomadic tribes and small kingdoms. These were the Persians' cousins, other Indo-Iranian peoples. Cyrus spent years campaigning in the east. He expanded Persian power to the edges of India and the steppes of Central Asia. He was building the infrastructure of empire, roads, way stations, and administrative systems. Then came Babylon, the conquest we started with. Babylon in 539 BC was the greatest city on earth, maybe 250,000 people, with walls so thick that chariot races were held on top of them. The Babylonians had conquered the entire Fertile Crescent. They were the heirs to thousands of years of Mesopotamian civilization. Taking Babylon meant controlling the heartland of civilization itself. Cyrus did it without a major battle through bribery, propaganda, and political maneuvering. He presented himself as a liberator, restoring proper worship of Babylonian gods. The people accepted him. With Babylon, Cyrus controlled everything from Anatolia to Central Asia. From the Mediterranean to the border, he built the largest empire the world had ever seen. In less than 20 years, he'd done it with a combination of military skill, political intelligence, and administrative genius. He created a system that could actually govern this massive territory. Provincial governors called satraps, who had significant autonomy but answered to the king, a road network for communication and troop movement, and a policy of religious tolerance that kept conquered people loyal. Cyrus died in 530 BC fighting nomadic tribes in Central Asia. The exact circumstances are unclear. He may have been killed in battle against the Massageta, a nomadic people led by Queen Tomaris, who according to Herodotus had Cyrus's body mutilated and his head dunked in a bag of blood to satisfy his thirst for war. This is probably propaganda too, the kind of story people tell about barbarians. What matters is that Cyrus died as he lived, conquering, and he left behind an empire and a system. His son, Cambyses II, inherited the throne and immediately invaded Egypt in 525 BC. Egypt was the last major independent power in the region. It was ancient, wealthy, and proud. Cambyses crushed the Egyptian army at Pelusium and marched on Memphis. The pharaoh surrendered. Egypt became a Persian province. Cambyses had expanded the empire to its greatest extent yet, but Cambyses went crazy, or so the sources say. He killed his brother, murdered the sacred Apis bull worshipped by Egyptians, and acted like a tyrant. When news came of a rebellion in Persia, Cambyses marched home, but died on the way in 522 BC, possibly from suicide after a wound became infected. The exact cause of death is debated. What followed was chaos. A man claiming to be Cambyses' murdered brother seized the throne. The empire fractured into rebellion. Provinces declared independence. It looked like the Persian Empire would collapse less than 30 years after Cyrus founded it. Then Darius, a member of a collateral branch of the royal family, led a conspiracy of 7 Persian nobles. They stormed the palace, killed the pretender they claimed was an imposter, and Darius seized the throne. This is the official version. The truth is probably that Darius launched a coup and invented the pretender story to justify it. Darius the Great, as he became known, ruled from 522 to 486 BC and transformed the Persian Empire from a conquest state into an administrative machine. He spent the first years crushing rebellions across the empire, 19 separate revolts by his own count. He recorded his victories in a massive inscription carved into a cliff face at Behistun in 3 languages. Persian inscription is one of history's great primary sources. It's propaganda, sure, but it tells us how Darius wanted to be seen as a legitimate king restoring order against chaos and lies. Darius reorganized the empire into 20 satrapies, provinces, with standardized tax rates. Each satrapy had a governor, a military commander, and a royal secretary who reported directly to the king. This created checks and balances, preventing any one official from becoming too powerful. Darius built a network of royal roads connecting the empire. The royal road from Sardis to Susa was over 1,500 miles long, with way stations every 15 miles where royal messengers could change horses. A messenger could travel the entire length in a week, incredibly fast for the ancient world. This road network allowed Darius to communicate with distant provinces and move armies quickly. Darius standardized weights and measures across the empire. He introduced a gold coin called a daric, creating a common currency. He dug a canal connecting the Nile to the Red Sea, an ancient Suez Canal. He built a new capital at Persepolis, a ceremonial complex of unbelievable grandeur, with massive stone columns, elaborate reliefs showing tribute bearers from across the empire, and a throne room where the King of Kings received visitors. Persepolis was a statement, the center of the world, where all nations came to acknowledge Persian supremacy. But Darius also expanded through conquest. He invaded India and added the Indus Valley to the empire. He conquered Thrace, making Persia a European power. He sent a fleet to explore the Indian Ocean. He was building an empire that connected 3 continents, the first true world empire. Then came Greece, and this is where Persian history gets hijacked by Western mythology. In 499 BC, Greek cities in Ionia, part of the Persian Empire in western Anatolia, rebelled. They were supported by Athens and Eretria, Greek city-states across the Aegean. Darius crushed the Ionian revolt by 494 BC, but decided to punish the mainland Greeks for their interference. In 490 BC, he sent a punitive expedition across the Aegean. The Persians landed at Marathon, 26 miles from Athens. The Battle of Marathon is one of history's most mythologized events. The Athenians, outnumbered but fighting for their homeland, charged the Persian line and won a stunning victory. The Persians fled to their ships. Athens was saved. A runner named Phidippides ran to Athens with news of victory and then collapsed dead, giving us the marathon race. It's also propaganda. The reality is more complex. Marathon was a Persian defeat, but it wasn't the decisive victory Greek sources claim. The Persian army at Marathon was maybe 25,000 men, expeditionary force, not the full might of the empire. They were primarily infantry with cavalry support. The Athenians had about 10,000 hoplites, heavily armored infantry. When the Persians sent their cavalry to attack by sea elsewhere, the Athenians seized the opportunity and charged. They broke the Persian center and routed them. It was a tactical victory against a fraction of Persian power. Darius planned a much larger invasion, but died in 486 BC before he could launch it. His son Xerxes inherited the throne and the war. Xerxes spent 4 years preparing the largest military expedition in history to that point. He was going to conquer Greece completely. He built bridges across the Hellespont, the strait separating Asia from Europe. When storms destroyed the bridges, he allegedly had the sea whipped and thrown chains into it. This story, from Herodotus, is obviously propaganda. What actually happened is that Xerxes rebuilt the bridges with improved engineering and invaded in 480 BC with an army estimated by modern historians at maybe 200,000 to 300,000 men. Greek sources claim millions, but that's fantasy. The invasion is remembered in the West for Greek heroism. At Thermopylae, 300 Spartans and several thousand other Greeks held a narrow pass for 3 days against the Persian army before being outflanked and annihilated. King Leonidas of Sparta died fighting. It's an epic story of sacrifice and courage, and it was meaningless. Strategically, the Greeks lost. The pass fell. The Persians marched into central Greece. They captured and burned Athens. The Greek fleet had already evacuated. Xerxes stood in the ruins of Athens victorious. Then the Greek fleet destroyed the Persian fleet at the Battle of Salamis. Xerxes, watching from shore, saw his ships rammed, burned, and sunk. Without naval superiority, he couldn't supply his army in Greece. He withdrew most of his forces, leaving a general named Mardonius with maybe 100,000 men to finish the conquest. In 479 BC, the Greeks won a decisive battle at Plataea, killing Mardonius and routing the Persian army. Xerxes withdrew from Greece completely. The invasion had failed. But here's what Western sources don't emphasize. The Persian Empire lost a war but barely noticed. Greece was a sideshow, remote and poor compared to the wealth of Babylonia and Egypt. The empire continued without interruption. Xerxes ruled until 465 BC, when he was assassinated by his own guards in a palace conspiracy. His son Artaxerxes I took power after killing his brother. The empire continued. For the next century and a half, the Persian Empire was the superpower of the ancient world. Greek city-states fought each other constantly. Sparta and Athens destroyed each other in the Peloponnesian War from 400 and 404 BC. The Persians played both sides, giving gold to whoever would fight their rival. Persian gold, not Persian armies, shaped Greek politics. The Greeks were so busy killing each other, they couldn't threaten Persia. But the empire had problems. The system Darius built worked when the king was strong. When the king was weak, satraps became independent. Rebellions became common. Egypt revolted and established independence from 404 to 304 to 3 BC. Satraps in Anatolia acted like independent kings. The empire was held together by the idea of the king of kings more than actual control. Persian kings murdered each other with depressing regularity. Artaxerxes I was followed by Xerxes II, who ruled for 45 days before being murdered by his brother, who was then murdered by another brother. Artaxerxes II ruled for 46 years but spent much of it fighting rebellions, including one led by his own brother. Artaxerxes III was a capable ruler who reconquered Egypt but was poisoned by a eunuch. His successor was murdered within a few years. The Persian court was a snake pit where eunuchs, queens, and generals conspired endlessly. Then came Philip of Macedon. Philip united the Greek city-states under his control through a combination of military force and political genius. He planned to invade Persia but was assassinated in 336 BC. His son Alexander inherited the throne at age 20 and immediately began preparing to finish his father's work. The Persian Empire was ruled by Darius III, a distant relative of the royal family who had been placed on the throne after previous kings were murdered. He was competent but not brilliant, and he faced the best military mind of the ancient world. Alexander invaded in 334 BC with about 40,000 men, a tiny force compared to the Persian Empire's potential manpower. He used heavy cavalry as a shock force, supported by disciplined infantry phalanxes and light troops for skirmishing. He moved faster than anyone expected. He defeated a Persian army at the Granicus River in 334 BC and conquered Anatolia. He defeated Darius personally at the Battle of Issus. In 333 BC, Darius fled, abandoning his family to Alexander's mercy. Alexander treated them well, a propaganda coup showing that he was a more honorable king than the barbarian Persians. Alexander turned south and conquered the Levant and Egypt. He He was welcomed in Egypt as a liberator from Persian rule, declared himself pharaoh, and founded Alexandria. Then he marched back to confront Darius. At the Battle of Gaugamela in 331 BC, near modern Mosul, Iraq, Darius assembled the largest army he could muster, maybe 100,000 men, with Scythe chariots and war elephants. Alexander had maybe 50,000. Alexander won through brilliant tactical maneuvering, breaking the Persian center with a cavalry charge directly at Darius's position. Darius fled again. His army disintegrated. Alexander marched across the Persian Empire, capturing cities that opened their gates to him. He entered Babylon, as Cyrus had, claiming to be a liberator. He reached Persepolis and burned it, allegedly during a drunken party at the urging of a Greek courtesan. The destruction of Persepolis was symbolic, the revenge of Greece against Persia for burning Athens. Alexander was conquering, but also destroying. Darius fled east, trying to rally support. His own satraps murdered him in 330 BC, hoping to win favor with Alexander. It didn't work. Alexander hunted them down and executed them for killing their king. He then declared himself the legitimate successor to Darius, the new king of kings. The Achaemenid Empire was dead. Alexander's empire replaced it. But Alexander's empire died with him. He died in 323 BC at age 32 in Babylon, possibly from disease or poisoning. His generals immediately began fighting over his empire. The wars of the Diadochi, the successors, lasted for decades. Alexander's empire fragmented. The Ptolemies took Egypt. The Seleucids took Syria, Mesopotamia, and Persia. The Antigonids took Macedon and Greece. The unity Alexander created died. The Seleucid Empire controlled what had been the core of the Persian Empire, but they were Greek, not Persian. They promoted Greek culture, founded Greek cities, and ruled in Greek fashion. For a century, it looked like the Persian Empire was dead, and Greek culture would dominate the East. Then came the Parthians. The Parthians were an Iranian people from the northeastern part of the former Persian Empire, near modern Turkmenistan. They'd been subjects of the Seleucids, but rebelled in the 240s BC. Under a leader named Arsaces, they established an independent kingdom. The Seleucids tried to reconquer them, but failed. The Parthians expanded, conquering territory bit by bit. By 141 BC, they controlled Mesopotamia. By 115 BC, they'd pushed the Seleucids back to Syria. The Parthians had restored Iranian rule to the Iranian plateau and Mesopotamia. A new Persian empire had risen. The Parthian Empire from 247 BC to 224 AD is the forgotten Persian Empire. Western sources barely mention it because it doesn't fit the narrative. The Romans fought the Parthians for over 3 centuries, and the Parthians won more often than they lost. But Roman historians didn't want to dwell on defeats to barbarians, so Parthian history is poorly recorded. The Parthians organized their empire differently. From the Achaemenids, they were more decentralized, a confederation of semi-independent kingdoms and territories, acknowledging the Parthian king as overlord. Great families held power in their regions. The system was feudal before feudalism existed. It worked because Parthian culture emphasized loyalty and honor among nobles. It also meant the empire was always somewhat divided, which limited Parthian power but also made it hard to destroy. The Parthian military was built around horse archers, light cavalry, who could shoot arrows while riding at full gallop. This was a revolutionary military system. Parthian horse archers would circle enemy formations at range, shooting arrows, then retreat when pursued. They practiced the Parthian shot, shooting backward while retreating, which became proverbial. Enemy armies couldn't catch them, couldn't close with them, and were gradually worn down by arrows. Supporting the horse archers were cataphracts, heavily armored cavalry who charged in close combat. The combination was devastating. Rome learned this at the Battle of Cara in 53 BC. Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of Rome's richest men and a member of the first triumvirate with Caesar and Pompey, invaded Parthia with 7 legions, about 40,000 men. He was seeking military glory and Parthian gold. He got neither. Near the town of Carhae in northern Mesopotamia, a Parthian army commanded by Sharenna, a young general, surrounded the Romans. Parthian horse archers, circled the Roman formations for hours, shooting them to pieces. Every time the Romans advanced, the Parthians retreated. Every time the Romans stopped, the arrows came faster. The Romans formed testudo, shield walls, but arrows found gaps. Crassus sent his son with cavalry to chase the horse archers. The Parthians led them away from the main force and annihilated them. They sent the son's head back on a spear. By the end of the day, 20,000 Romans were dead. 10,000 were captured. Crassus was killed during negotiations, possibly when Parthians poured molten gold down his throat to mock his greed. Though this is probably legend, the Battle of Cara was one of Rome's worst defeats. The Parthians destroyed a Roman army in open battle and proved their system worked against the best infantry in the world. Rome and Parthia fought for the next 3 centuries over control of Armenia and Mesopotamia. The border shifted back and forth. Sometimes Rome invaded and sacked the Parthian capital at Ctesiphon. Sometimes Parthians invaded Roman cities. Neither side could decisively defeat the other. The Parthians couldn't conquer Roman territory permanently. Rome couldn't hold Mesopotamia long-term. They reached a stalemate, 2 superpowers dividing the Near East between them, but the Parthian system had weaknesses. The decentralized structure meant internal conflict was constant. Great families fought each other. Succession crises were regular. Kings struggled to control their nobles. By the 3rd century AD, the Parthian Empire was weakening from internal division. A Persian vassal family from Fars province, the homeland of Cyrus, decided to restore Persian greatness. Ardashir, a local king under Parthian overlordship, rebelled in 224 AD. He defeated the Parthian king Artabanus at the Battle of Hormozgan. Ardashir declared himself King of Kings, claiming descent from the Achaemenids and legitimacy as restorer of the true Persian Empire. He founded the Sassanid Dynasty, named after his grandfather Sasan. The Parthian Empire was dead. The Sassanid Persian Empire was born. The Sassanids ruled from 224 to 651 AD and created the most centralized, ideologically unified Persian state yet. They were more like the Achaemenids than the Parthians, but with crucial differences. They promoted Zoroastrianism as the state religion, the first time Persia had an official religion. Zoroastrianism, founded by the prophet Zoroaster centuries earlier, taught that the world was a battleground between Ahura Mazda, the god of truth and light, and Angra Mainyu, the spirit of lies and darkness. Humans had to choose between truth and lies, light and dark. Zoroastrian priests, called magi, became a powerful class in Sassanid society. The Sassanids built a professional bureaucracy, staffed by scribes who kept detailed records. They standardized administration. They created a military system, combining heavy cavalry with infantry and siege warfare. They built fortifications along their borders. They promoted arts and learning. The Sassanid court became a center of culture where scholars, poets, and artists gathered. The Sassanids saw themselves as restoring civilization against the chaos of nomads and Romans. Ardashir's son, Shapur I, ruled from 240 to 270 AD and proved Sassanid Persia was a superpower. He defeated 3 Roman emperors in battle. He captured Emperor Valerian in 260 AD at the Battle of Edessa, the first time a Roman emperor had been captured by enemies. Shapur allegedly used Valerian as a footstool when mounting his horse. The ultimate humiliation. When Valerian died in captivity, Shapur had his body stuffed and displayed in a temple as a trophy. This story may be propaganda, but it shows how the Sassanids saw themselves as equals or superiors to Rome. Shapur commemorated his victories in rock reliefs at Nakhr-e-Rustam, showing Roman emperors kneeling before him. These reliefs still exist. They're statements in stone that personally see us. Shapur also promoted religious tolerance initially, allowing Christians, Jews, Buddhists, and Manichaeans to practice freely. His court included scholars from across the known world. He was building an empire based on military power and cultural sophistication. But the Sassanids also persecuted when it suited them. Later Sassanid kings saw Christianity as a Roman religion and a fifth column. They persecuted Christians in waves, particularly during wars with Rome. Zoroastrian priests pushed for orthodoxy, crushing heresies and alternative religions. The Manichaean prophet Mani who tried to synthesize Zoroastrianism, Christianity and Buddhism, was imprisoned and died in Sassanid custody in 274 AD. Religious tolerance in Sassanid Persia was conditional and politically motivated. The Sassanids fought Rome, then the Byzantine Empire, for 4 centuries. They conquered territory repeatedly. Shapur II ruled for 70 years from 309 to 379 AD and fought Emperor Julian the Apostate to a standstill. Khosrow I, the immortal soul, ruled from 531 to 579 AD and modernized the empire, reforming taxes, building infrastructure, and patronizing learning. Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, and Persian literature flourished at his court. He was one of history's great rulers, combining military skill with administrative genius. Then came Khosrow II, who nearly destroyed the Byzantine Empire in the early 7th century. We covered this in the Byzantine script, but from the Persian perspective, it's different. Khosrow had been sheltered by Byzantine Emperor Maurice when he faced a rebellion. When Maurice was murdered in 602 by a usurper named Phocas, Khosrow used this as justification for war. He claimed to be avenging his benefactor, but really he saw opportunity to destroy the Byzantines. Sassanid armies conquered Syria, Palestine, Egypt, and pushed to the walls of Constantinople by 626 AD. For a moment, it looked like the Sassanids would finally destroy their ancient enemy. Then Byzantine Emperor Heraclius launched a desperate counter-offensive, invading deep into Persian territory. At the Battle of Nineveh in 627 AD, Heraclius personally killed the Persian command in single combat. The Persian army broke. Khosrow fled. His own nobles overthrew and murdered him. His son made peace, returning all conquered territory. The Byzantine-Sassanid War of 602-628 AD devastated both empires, cities destroyed, populations killed, treasuries empty, armies exhausted. Both empires had fought each other to mutual near death. And then something neither expected happened. In 632 AD, Muhammad died in Medina, having united Arabia under Islam. His successors looked north at 2 exhausted empires and saw opportunity. The Arab conquests hit Persia like a thunderbolt. At the Battle of Al-Qadisidi in 636 AD, a Muslim Arab army destroyed the main Sassanid field army. The Persian military system, which had dominated for centuries, couldn't cope with motivated Arab warriors fighting for religious fervor and loot. The Persians had elephants, heavy cavalry, and professional soldiers. The Arabs had faith, mobility, and nothing to lose. The Arabs won. The Battle of Nahvand in 642 AD destroyed another Sassanid army. Arab forces poured across Persia. They captured the capital Ctesiphon in 637 AD and looted it. The last Sassanid king, Yazdegerd III, fled east, trying to rally support. He was murdered by a miller in 651 AD for his jewelry. The Sassanid Empire was finished. Islam had conquered Persia in less than 20 years. But here's what's remarkable. Islam conquered Persia politically, but Persia conquered Islam culturally. Arab Muslims controlled the territory, but Persian administrators ran the government. Persian scholars, scientists, and poets dominated Islamic civilization. Persian became the language of culture and administration across the Islamic East. Persian influence shaped Islamic art, architecture, poetry, and political thought. The Abbasid Caliphate, which ruled the Islamic world from 750 to 1258 AD, was essentially a Persian empire in Muslim form, headquartered in Baghdad, the city the Persian Sassanids had founded. Zoroastrianism was suppressed, though communities survived and still exist today, but Persian identity remained. Persian-speaking dynasties like the Samanids, Buyids, and eventually the Safavids restored Persian political power. The Safavid Empire in the 16th to 18th centuries made Shia Islam the state religion of Persia and created the foundations of modern Iran. Persian civilization adapted, absorbed, and continued, just in new forms. So what was the Persian achievement across 1200 years and 3 empires? First, they invented the model of the multicultural empire. The Achaemenids showed that you could rule diverse peoples through tolerance, local autonomy, and pragmatic administration. You didn't have to force everyone to be Persian. You just needed their loyalty and taxes. This model influenced every later empire from Rome to the Ottomans to the British. Second, they preserved and transmitted knowledge across civilizations. Persian scholars under the Sassanids translated Greek philosophy, Indian mathematics, and scientific texts into Persian and later Arabic. Without these translations, much of Greek learning would have been lost. The Islamic Golden Age was built on Persian foundations. When Europeans rediscovered Greek philosophy during the Renaissance, they were reading Arabic translations, baked from Persian translations of Greek originals. Third, they demonstrated that civilization could exist outside the Greco-Roman tradition. Western history teaches that civilization went from Greece to Rome to Europe. This ignores Persia, which was contemporaneous with Greece and Rome, equally sophisticated and arguably more successful. The Persian empires lasted longer than any Greek state and matched Rome for centuries. Persian art, architecture, literature, and political thought developed independently and influenced the entire eastern half of the Old World. Fourth, they invented postal systems, standardized coinage, efficient taxation, professional bureaucracy, and countless other administrative innovations that modern states still use. The idea of a standing professional army, the concept of state-sponsored infrastructure, like roads and bridges, the model of a centralized state divided into provinces with standardized rules. These are Persian innovations. Fifth, they showed that empires could be defeated, but civilizations endure. The Achaemenids fell to Alexander. The Parthians fell to the Sassanids. The Sassanids fell to the Arabs. But Persian civilization survived every conquest. Persian language, culture, and identity persisted through Greek rule, Parthian feudalism, Sassanid centralization, and Islamic conquest. Modern Iran is the direct heir to this tradition, the only ancient civilization still existing as a nation-state in its original homeland, with its original language. But Persian history also shows the costs of empire. The constant wars with Greece, Rome, and Byzantium drained resources that could have developed the empire. The rigid class system under the Sassanids concentrated power and wealth in the hands of nobles and priests, while peasants suffered under heavy taxation. The religious intolerance of later Sassanid kings drove minorities to support Arab invaders as liberators. The imperial system required constant expansion and conquest to feed itself, creating enemies on every border. The Persians were brutal when they needed to be. They impaled rebels, crucified enemies, and destroyed cities that resisted. Darius the Great's Behistun inscription lists thousands of rebels executed. The sack of Cephan by Arab armies in 637 AD saw libraries burned, and treasures looted. Savan by Arab armies in 637. The famous peacock throne, studded with gems, was carried off as loot and eventually ended up in India. The Sassanid royal family was hunted down and killed. This was the fate of defeated empires. The story of the Persian empires matters because it challenges Western historical narratives. We're taught that Greece invented democracy and philosophy, Rome invented law and engineering, and Europe inherited both to create Western civilization. This narrative ignores or vilifies everyone else. The Persians were the bad guys in 300, the mindless hordes the noble Greeks defeated. The reality is that Persia and Greece were rival civilizations of equal sophistication, with different values and systems. The Greeks valued the polis, the small independent city-state where citizens participated in government. The Persians valued order, the large multi-ethnic empire, where the king maintained peace and justice. The Greeks saw Persian monarchy as despotism and slavery. The Persians saw Greek democracy as chaos and mob rule. Neither was objectively right. They were different political philosophies solving different problems. The Persian system worked remarkably well for remarkably long. The Achaemenid Empire lasted over 200 years with only two major civil wars. The Roman Republic, which existed for the same time period, had constant civil wars and political violence. The Sassanid Empire lasted over 4 centuries fighting off Rome and Byzantium, while maintaining a sophisticated court culture. Most European kingdoms of the same period were violent, unstable, and culturally backwards, and the Persians left monuments that still inspire awe. Persepolis, even in ruins, is magnificent, massive columns and elaborate reliefs showing the diversity of the empire. The rock reliefs at Naxi, Rustam, and Behistun still exist after 2,500 years. The Sassanid Palace at Ctesiphon had the largest single-span vault in the world. Until modern times, Persian art influenced Islamic art, creating the aesthetic we associate with the Muslim world. Geometric patterns, calligraphy, miniature paintings, and architectural elements like the Awan, the vaulted hall. Persian literature shaped world literature. The Shahnameh, Ferdowsi's epic poem, written in the 10th century, preserved pre-Islamic Persian legends and history. It's one of the world's longest epic poems and a masterpiece of Persian literature. The poetry of Rumi, Hafez, and Omar Khayyam is read worldwide today. Persian literary traditions influenced literature from Turkey to India. But perhaps the most important Persian legacy is the idea that civilization is possible without Greek philosophy or Roman law. You can have sophisticated government, rich culture, scientific achievement, and great art without being part of the Western tradition. This matters because it shows that human achievement is universal, not the property of one civilization. The Persians proved that humans in Iran were as capable of greatness as humans in Athens or Rome. The fall of the Sassanid Empire to the Arabs in 651 AD ended Persian political independence for over 8 centuries, but it didn't end Persian civilization. Under Islamic rule, Persians became viziers, generals, scholars, and poets. The Achaemenid Dynasty, ruling from Baghdad in the 10th century, were Persian Shia Muslims who controlled the Sunni Abbasid caliphs. The Seljuk Turks, who conquered Persia in the 11th century, adopted Persian culture and administration. The Mongols, who destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate in 1258, also adopted Persian administration. The Safavid Empire, founded in 1501, restored Persian independence and established Shia Islam as the state religion, distinguishing Persia from the Sunni Ottoman Empire to the west. The Safavids ruled until 1736, creating a state that was recognizably the ancestor of modern Iran. They built mosques and palaces in Isfahan that rival anything in the Islamic world. They patronized the arts, creating the Persian miniature painting tradition that influenced art from Turkey to India. The Qajar dynasty, ruling from 1789 to 1925, saw Persia pressured by Russian and British imperialism. The country became a battleground in the Great Game, the struggle between Britain and Russia for control of Central Asia. Persia lost territory to Russia in a series of humiliating wars. The British controlled Persia's southern trade and later its oil. By the early 20th century, Persia was effectively a semi-colony despite never being formally conquered. The Constitutional Revolution of 1905-1911 attempted to limit royal power and create a parliament. It partially succeeded, giving Persia a constitution and elected assembly, but the monarchy retained significant power. In 1925, Reza Shah Pahlavi seized power and founded a new dynasty. He modernized Persia, building railroads, schools, and military forces. In 1935, he officially changed the country's name to Iran, emphasizing its Iranian heritage over its Persian identity. Though Persian remained the dominant ethnicity and language, Reza Shah was overthrown by British and Soviet forces in 1941 for refusing to cooperate with the Allies during World War II. His son Mohammad Reza Shah ruled until 1979, when the Islamic Revolution overthrew the monarchy. The Islamic Republic of Iran, founded by Ayatollah Khomeini, created a theocratic government combining Islamic law with republican institutions. It's a unique system, part democracy and part theocracy, with an elected president and parliament, but ultimate authority resting with the supreme leader, a religious figure. Modern Iran is the heir to 3,000 years of Persian civilization. The language spoken in Iran today, Farsi, is the direct descendant of the Old Persian spoken by Cyrus and Darius. Iranian culture, from poetry to food to music, preserves and continues traditions going back millennia. The Iranian sense of identity is intimately connected to this ancient heritage. Iranians see themselves as descendants of Cyrus the Great, heirs to the civilization that built Persepolis and Fort Alexander. This matters for understanding modern Iran and its relationship with the West. Iran isn't just another Middle Eastern country, it's the continuation of one of history's great civilizations with a sense of itself as culturally superior to its neighbors and historically equal to any Western power. When Iran resists Western pressure or pursues regional influence, it's not irrational behavior. It's a country with an imperial past, seeing itself as a natural regional power, being denied its rightful place by foreigners who've been trying to control it for 2 centuries. The Persian empires fell because all empires fall. They made mistakes. They faced enemies with new weapons and tactics. They grew corrupt and divided. They lost the will or ability to adapt. Alexander's combined arms tactics defeated Achaemenid armies. Arab religious fervor and mobility defeated Sassanid military systems. The Persians were defeated by historical forces larger than any one civilization could resist. But for 1200 years across 3 dynasties, the Persians built empires that connected continents, preserved knowledge, patronized arts, and created political systems that worked. They showed that you could rule diverse peoples through tolerance and pragmatism. They preserved Greek philosophy for the Renaissance. They created administrative systems every later empire copied. They built monuments that still inspire awe. They wrote poetry still read worldwide. They created a civilization that survived every conquest and continues today. This is the entire history of the Persian Empire, not the barbarian hordes from Western fantasy. A civilization that matched Greece and Rome in achievement, exceeded them in tolerance and administrative skill, and influenced human history from India to Europe. A civilization defeated militarily but victorious culturally, whose art, language, and identity survived for 3 millennia. The Persians matter. They showed that human greatness isn't the monopoly of any one civilization, that sophisticated government, rich culture, and scientific achievement are possible in any society that values knowledge, tolerates diversity, and pursues excellence, that empires fall but civilizations can endure if their culture is strong enough. When the Sassanid Empire fell in 651 AD, Persian soldiers fought to the last against Arab armies. When the last king was murdered by a miller for his jewelry, Persian civilization didn't die. It adapted, it persisted, it influenced its conquerors until Persian culture dominated the Eastern Islamic world. That's a victory of a different kind, not military but cultural. Not political, but civilizational. But we need to dive deeper into what made Persian civilization actually work, because the broad sweep of dynasties and battles misses the daily reality of how the greatest empires in the ancient world actually functioned, and that reality reveals both brilliance and brutality. In equal measure, the Persian economy was the engine that powered everything else. The Achaemenid Empire controlled the richest regions of the ancient world. Mesopotamia with its irrigation agriculture, Egypt with the Nile's annual floods, Anatolia with its mineral wealth, Central Asia with its trade routes. The empire sat at the crossroads of the world, controlling trade between East and West, North and South, silk from China, spices from India, gold from Africa, all moved through Persian territory. The empire taxed all of it. Persian taxation was sophisticated and brutal. Darius the Great's tax reforms established fixed tribute from each province, paid in gold or silver. The Babylonian provinces paid the most, reflecting their wealth. Mountain provinces paid less. Some regions paid in goods, rather than cash. Horses from Media, grain from Egypt, exotic animals from distant regions. The system was designed to extract maximum revenue while maintaining local economies. Tax collectors were hated but efficient. They kept detailed records on clay tablets and papyrus. They used standardized measures. They enforced collection with the threat of military force. The darik, the Persian gold coin introduced by Darius, became the dollar of the ancient world. It showed the king as an archer, the royal symbol, and was minted at a consistent weight and purity. Greek mercenaries demanded payment in darics. Indian merchants accepted darics. The coin's stability and acceptance across such a vast region was a remarkable achievement, effectively creating an international currency 500 years before the Roman denarius. But wealth concentration was extreme. The king was incomprehensibly rich. The royal treasuries at Persepolis, Susa, Ecbatana, and Babylon held thousands of tons of gold and silver. When Alexander captured these treasuries, he found so much wealth it took thousands of mules and camels months to transport it all. This was centuries of accumulated tribute. The Persian king could literally afford to hire every available mercenary in the world and still have enough gold to build palaces. The nobility was also fabulously wealthy. Persian nobles owned vast estates worked by dependent labor. They They commanded private armies. They lived in luxury that made even Greek tyrants look modest. Satraps, the provincial governors, lived like kings themselves with courts, harems, and treasuries. The gap between the rich and everyone else was staggering. This created social tensions that erupted during times of weakness. Slavery existed, but was different from the plantation slavery of Rome or the antebellum American South. Most agricultural labor was done by free peasants or dependent workers tied to land, not chattel slaves. Household slavery was common among the wealthy. War captives were often enslaved. But the Persian economy wasn't built on slave labor the way the Roman economy was. This is important because it means Persian society had a larger class of free farmers who could be recruited as soldiers, giving the empire military depth Rome lacked. Persian military organization evolved dramatically over the centuries. The Achaemenid armies were built around the Immortals, an elite unit of 10,000 professional infantry that maintained constant numbers by immediately replacing casualties. They were called Immortals because their numbers never diminished. They wore elaborate uniforms, carried spears and bows, and formed the core of the royal bodyguard. Supporting them were provincial levies, infantry, and cavalry raised from across the empire. Persian armies were multicultural by necessity, with each region providing troops in their traditional style. The weakness of this system was coordination and loyalty. Troops from different regions spoke different languages, used different tactics, and had varying levels of commitment to the empire. Greek hoplites fighting as mercenaries for Persia could turn on their employers or prove unreliable in battle. Provincial levies might desert if the campaign went badly. The strength was numbers and diversity. The Persians could field enormous armies and had troops specializing in every type of warfare: heavy cavalry, light cavalry, infantry, archers, chariots. The Parthian military system was revolutionary because it solved the coordination problem by focusing on one type of troop, horse archers, and building everything around that. These were professional warriors who trained from childhood. They were loyal to their lords, who were loyal to the king. The system was feudal but effective. Parthian armies were smaller than Achaemenid armies, but more mobile and tactically flexible. The Parthian shot, shooting backwards while retreating at full gallop, required extraordinary skill and training. It took years to master, but it made Parthian cavalry nearly impossible to defeat in open terrain. Roman legionaries, the best heavy infantry in the world, were helpless against enemies they couldn't catch and who killed from range. The Parthians lost when forced to fight in mountains or sieges where their mobility was negated. In the plains of Mesopotamia, they were nearly unbeatable. The Sassanid military combined the best of both systems. They maintained heavy cavalry cataphracts for shock combat, horse archers for mobility, and infantry for sieges and defensive warfare. They used war elephants imported from India as terror weapons and battering rams. They developed sophisticated siege engineering, building siege towers, battering rams, and sappers who undermined walls. Sassanid armies could fight any kind of battle and were tactically flexible in ways earlier Persian armies weren't. But Sassanid military power was expensive. Maintaining professional armies, fortifying borders, and developing new weapons required enormous resources. By the early 7th century, the Sassanids had been fighting the Byzantines for decades and were financially exhausted. When the Arabs attacked, the Sassanids couldn't afford to raise new armies to replace those destroyed in battle. Economic exhaustion destroyed them more than military defeat. Religion in Persian empires evolved from tolerance to intolerance and back. The Achaemenids practiced Zoroastrianism, but allowed religious freedom. Cyrus's decree about letting Jews return to Jerusalem was part of a broader policy of respecting local gods and customs. Achaemenid kings made offerings to Marduk in Babylon, acknowledged Egyptian gods, and respected Greek temples. This wasn't just tolerance, it was pragmatic imperialism. If you let people worship their gods, they're less likely to rebel. But Zoroastrianism shaped Persian identity even then. The concept of Asha, truth and order, versus Dru, lies and chaos, defined how Persians saw themselves. The king was the champion of truth, bringing order to a chaotic world. Enemies were liars and agents of chaos. This worldview justified Persian imperialism as a moral crusade to spread truth and order. It's similar to how later empires justified conquest through religion or civilizing missions. The Parthians were less religiously unified. Zoroastrianism remained the dominant religion of the Iranian plateau, but the Parthian Empire included Christians, Jews, Buddhists, and various pagan cults. The Parthians didn't care what you worshipped, as long as you paid taxes and didn't rebel. This tolerance was pragmatic, not ideological. The empire was too decentralized to enforce religious conformity, even if they'd wanted to. The Sassanids made Zoroastrianism the state religion and elevated Zoroastrian priests to political power. The Magi became a hereditary priestly class with authority over religious law, education, and morality. They crowned kings, blessed military campaigns, and judged theological disputes. This created a theocratic element in the Sassanid state. The king ruled with divine approval, and the priests validated his rule. In exchange, the king enforced Zoroastrian orthodoxy. This led to persecution of other religions. Christians were suspected of being a fifth column for Rome. Later Byzantine, major persecutions occurred under Shapur II in the 4th century and Yazdegerd II in the 5th century. Thousands of Christians were executed, churches were destroyed, bishops were imprisoned. This drove many Christians to support first Roman, then Arab invaders as liberators from Zoroastrian persecution. Jews had a complex relationship with Persian power. They'd been liberated by Cyrus and remained grateful to Persian rule for centuries. Jewish communities thrived in Mesopotamia under Parthian and Sassanid rule. The Babylonian Talmud, one of Judaism's most important texts, was compiled in Persian Mesopotamia during the Sassanid period. But Jews also faced periodic persecution when political circumstances changed. The Sassanids tolerated Jews more than Christians because Jews had no foreign sponsor, but tolerance was always conditional. Zoroastrianism itself split into factions. The main division was between those emphasizing ritual purity and those emphasizing ethical behavior. The Magi generally emphasized ritual, proper prayers, proper sacrifices, proper behavior regarding fire and purity, but there were also mystical traditions and philosophical interpretations. When Islam conquered Persia, Zoroastrianism declined rapidly. Many converted to Islam to escape the extra taxes imposed on non-Muslims. Others fled to India, where their descendants, the Parsis, maintain Zoroastrian traditions today. Persian cultural achievements deserve their own focus because they influenced civilizations from India to Europe. Persian art developed a distinct aesthetic that spread across the empire. The characteristic features were elaborate decoration, geometric patterns, flowing designs, and vibrant colors. Persian carpets, which became world famous in later centuries, originated in this tradition. The art of miniature painting, small detailed paintings often illustrating manuscripts, reached its peak in Persian culture and influenced Islamic art throughout the Middle East and India. Persian architecture created several innovations. The Iwan, a vaulted hall open on one side, became a standard feature in Islamic architecture. The Sassanids built the largest single-span vault in the world at Ctesiphon, the Tak Kasra, which still stands in ruins in Iraq. The vault is 121 feet high and 75 feet wide, an engineering marvel that inspired awe in everyone who saw it. Arab conquerors were so impressed, they preserved it rather than destroying it. The architecture influenced Islamic mosques, palaces, and public buildings for centuries. Persian gardens created the paradise garden concept that spread throughout the Islamic world. Persian gardens were designed as earthly representations of paradise, with flowing water, shade trees, flowers, and geometric layouts. They were walled spaces of order and beauty in contrast to the harsh landscape outside. The Persian word for garden, Prideza, entered Greek as paradisari and became our word paradise. Every Islamic garden from Spain to India was inspired by Persian models. Persian literature and the Sassanid period was mostly oral, transmitted through professional storytellers and court poets. The stories of legendary kings and heroes, which would later be written down in Ferdowsi's Shahnameh, were already ancient by the Sassanid period. These stories blended history, mythology, and moral lessons. They celebrated Iranian heroes, glorified the struggle between truth and lies, and preserved cultural memory. When Islam conquered Persia, these stories survived, and provided Persians with a pre-Islamic identity they could celebrate. Persian influence on Islamic civilization cannot be overstated. When the Arabs conquered Persia, they were desert warriors with no experience running an empire. They relied on Persian bureaucrats who knew how to collect taxes, manage infrastructure, and administer provinces. The Umayyad Caliphate used Byzantine administration in the west and Persian administration in the east. The Abbasid Caliphate, which overthrew the Umayyads in 750 AD, was even more Persianized. The Abbasids moved their capital to Baghdad, close to the old Sassanid capital City Sifan. They adopted Persian court ceremonies, Persian administrative systems, and Persian culture. The Abbasid court was modeled on the Sassanid court. The vizier, the chief minister in Islamic governments, was a Persian institution. Persian nobles converted to Islam and became the backbone of Abbasid administration. Persian scientists, mathematicians, and physicians dominated the Islamic Golden Age. The House of Wisdom in Baghdad, where scholars translated Greek and Sanskrit texts into Arabic, was staffed largely by Persians. Al-Khwarizmi, the mathematician who gave us algebra and algorithms, was Persian. Avicenna, the physician whose medical texts were used in Europe for centuries, was Persian. Omar Khayyam, the mathematician and poet, was Persian. Rumi, the Sufi mystic whose poetry is still beloved worldwide, was Persian. The Islamic Golden Age was as much a Persian achievement as an Arab one. Persian became the language of culture and administration in the Eastern Islamic world. From the 10th century onward, Persian replaced Arabic as the prestige language from Iraq to India. Poetry was written in Persian. Government documents were in Persian. Scholars wrote in Persian. Turkish dynasties like the Seljuks and Ottomans adopted Persian as the language of their courts. The Mughal Empire in India used Persian as its administrative language until the 19th century. Persian was the linguistic glue holding together a vast region for nearly a millennium. The Safavid Empire, ruling from 1501 to 1736, created modern Iranian identity by making Shia Islam the state religion. This was a revolutionary decision. The Safavids were originally a Sufi order that became a military movement. When they conquered Iran, they forcibly converted the population from Sunni to Shia Islam. Over several generations, this created a distinct religious identity, separating Iran from the Sunni Ottoman Empire to the west and Sunni Central Asia to the east. Why does this matter? Because it created the sectarian divide that still shapes Middle Eastern politics. Iran became the center of Shia Islam. The rivalry between Safavid Iran and Ottoman Turkey was as much religious as political. This rivalry continues today in the proxy conflicts between Iran and Saudi Arabia, the modern representative of Sunni Islam. The decision to make Shia Islam Iran's official religion in the 16th century still shapes geopolitics in the 21st century. The Safavids also created an artistic and architectural flowering. Isfahan, their capital, became one of the world's most beautiful cities. The Naqshi Jahan Square, surrounded by mosques and palaces, is one of the largest public squares in the world and a UNESCO World Heritage Site. Safavid architecture used vibrant tile work, elaborate calligraphy, and geometric patterns to create buildings of stunning beauty. The Shah Mosque in Isfahan, with its perfect proportions and acoustic design, is considered one of the masterpieces of Islamic architecture. Safavid miniature painting reached its peak under royal patronage. Artists created detailed illustrations of court life, military campaigns, and legendary stories. These paintings combined Persian, Chinese, and European influences into a unique style. The detail was extraordinary, with tiny figures rendered with perfect precision, elaborate costumes shown in intricate detail, and scenes filled with symbolism and meaning. Safavid art influenced Ottoman and Mughal art, spreading its aesthetic across the Islamic world. But the Safavids also presided over Iran's decline as a military power. The gunpowder revolution in warfare, which saw cannons and muskets replace cavalry and arrows, happened while the Safavids were focused on religious conversion. The Ottomans adopted gunpowder weapons early and effectively. The Safavids were slower to adapt. When they faced the Ottomans in battle, they often lost because their military tactics were outdated. By the 18th century, Iran had fallen behind European and Ottoman military development. The Qajar period from 1789 to 1925 saw Iran become a semi-colony of European powers without being formally conquered. Russia expanded south into the Caucasus, conquering territory that had been Persian for centuries. Georgia, Armenia, Azerbaijan, all territories with Persian cultural influence, were absorbed into the Russian Empire. The treaties of Gulistan in 1813 and Turkmenchay in 1828 forced Iran to cede these territories and accept humiliating terms, including giving Russia commercial privileges and extraterritorial rights for Russian citizens. Britain controlled southern Iran through commercial concessions. British companies controlled Iran's trade, particularly the export of opium to India and China. In 1901, a British entrepreneur named William Knox D'Arcy obtained a concession to explore for oil in Iran. In 1908, his company discovered oil in southwestern Iran. This became the Anglo-Persian Oil Company, later British Petroleum, BP. Britain now had a direct interest in controlling Iran because of oil. The Royal Navy, which was converting from coal to oil, needed a secure oil supply. Iranian oil became a strategic necessity. The discovery of oil transformed Iran's position, but not in ways that benefited most Iranians. Oil revenues went to the government and British companies, not the population. The oil industry created a small, wealthy class and a larger working class, but most Iranians remained poor peasants. The Constitutional Revolution of 1905-1991 attempted to create a parliament and limit royal power. It succeeded partly, creating Iran's first parliament, the Majlis, and a constitution. But the Shah retained significant power, and the country remained weak and divided. World War I saw Iran occupied by British, Russian, and Ottoman forces. Despite Iran's declaration of neutrality, the war devastated the country. Famine killed perhaps 2 million people, over 10% of the population. Infrastructure was destroyed. The economy collapsed. When the war ended, Iran was in chaos. The Qajar dynasty was discredited. The country was on the verge of collapse or partition between Britain and Russia. Reza Khan, a military officer, seized power in a coup in 1921 with British support. He became war minister, then prime minister, and finally in 1925 convinced the Majlis to depose the Qajar dynasty and make him Shah. He founded the Pahlavi dynasty and took the name Reza Shah Pahlavi. He modeled himself after Ataturk in Turkey, attempting to modernize Iran through authoritarian reform. Reza Shah built railroads connecting Iran's regions for the first time. He built roads, schools, hospitals, and military facilities. He created a modern army trained and equipped along European lines. He banned traditional clothing and forced men to wear Western dress. He banned the veil for women, causing outrage among religious conservatives. He promoted Iranian nationalism, officially changing the country's name from Persia to Iran in 1935 to emphasize its Iranian rather than specifically Persian identity. But Reza Shah was also authoritarian and corrupt. He suppressed dissent, censored the press, and arrested opposition. He confiscated land and enriched himself and his family. He alienated religious leaders by restricting their power and attacking traditional practices. His modernization was imposed from above without popular support. When World War II began, his attempts to maintain neutrality and his perceived sympathy for Germany led Britain and the Soviet Union to invade Iran in 1941 and force his abdication. His son Mohammad Reza Shah ruled from 1941 to 1979, a reign that saw Iran become a major oil producer, a regional power, and finally collapse in revolution. The 1953 coup, orchestrated by the CIA and British intelligence to overthrow Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh, after he nationalized the oil industry, fundamentally changed Iranian politics. The Shah became an autocrat dependent on foreign support, particularly American support. This created the perception that he was a puppet of foreign powers. The White Revolution of the 1960s attempted to modernize Iran through land reform, women's rights, and industrialization. But it was opposed by religious leaders, particularly Ayatollah Khomeini, who was exiled in 1964 for his opposition. The Shah's secret police, Savak, brutally suppressed dissent. By the late 1970s, opposition had coalesced around Khomeini, who called for an Islamic government. The revolution of 1978-1979 overthrew the Shah and brought Khomeini to power. The Islamic Republic that followed combined democratic and theocratic elements in an unprecedented system. The constitution created an elected president and parliament but gave ultimate authority to the supreme leader, a religious figure appointed by an assembly of experts. The system reflected Khamenei's theory of velayat-i faqih, guardianship of the Islamic jurist, which held that religious scholars should guide government. It was an attempt to create an Islamic government compatible with modern institutions. The Iran-Iraq War from 1980 to 1980 devastated both countries, killing perhaps 1 million people. Iraq, supported by most Arab countries and the West, used chemical weapons against Iranian troops and cities. Iran used human wave attacks and mobilized religious fervor to compensate for inferior equipment. The war ended in stalemate, with neither side gaining territory, but it reinforced Iranian nationalism and the government's siege mentality. Modern Iran is a regional power with enormous influence in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen. It's developing nuclear technology, which the West fears could lead to nuclear weapons. It's isolated by American sanctions but economically connected to China and Russia. It's a theocracy with elections, a repressive government that also allows more political debate than most Middle Eastern countries. It's culturally sophisticated but politically rigid. It's simultaneously ancient and modern, proud of its pre-Islamic heritage while committed to Islamic government. The Iranian people are educated, young, and increasingly frustrated with restrictions on personal freedom and economic opportunities. Internet access and satellite television expose them to the outside world. Women have achieved high levels of education and professional success despite legal restrictions. There's a constant tension between the population's desire for more freedom and the government's commitment to Islamic principles. This tension will shape Iran's future. Persian civilization has survived 3,000 years of conquest, conversion, and change. The language spoken in Iran today descends directly from the Old Persian of Cyrus. Cultural traditions maintain continuity with the ancient past. Nowruz, the Persian New Year celebrated at the spring equinox, is over 3,000 years old, and still the most important Iranian holiday. Persian poetry, food, music, and social customs preserve ancient traditions alongside modern practices. This continuity is rare in world history. Egypt speaks Arabic, not Egyptian. Turkey speaks Turkish, not Greek or Latin, despite centuries of Roman and Byzantine rule. But Iran speaks Persian, maintains Persian identity, and sees itself as heir to Cyrus and Darius. This cultural continuity gives Iran a strong sense of itself as a civilization state, not just a nation state. Iranians see themselves as inheritors of one of history's great civilizations, and this shapes how they interact with the world. The Greeks won the military conflicts, we remember, but the Persians won the longer game of cultural influence and civilizational persistence, and they're still here, still proud, still seeing themselves as heirs to Cyrus the Great. That's more than most empires can say.